Who's the next team to go from promising to competing for a Lombardi trophy? I've got 3 teams and 3 prospects that can produce this year's New England Patriots. Last year, the NFL was taken by storm by the New England Patriots. Drake Maye took a massive leap. He entered the MVP discussion, and we watched Mike Vrabel transform a roster of what felt like a bunch of misfits into a well-coached, sound unit. While things didn't end well, it was still one of the best stories in the league that a young core could make it that far. So I took it upon myself with the 2026 NFL Draft, not that far away, to look at 3 teams that fit the criteria and pitching 3 draft prospects early in the upcoming draft that could take those teams to a potential shot at the Super Bowl. Those 3 teams, there's only 3 obvious ones here that I am going to be discussing today, are the New York Giants, the New Orleans Saints, and the Tennessee Titans. Let's start with the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward is going to have a defensive-minded coach leading the way with Rob Saleh stepping in. And this is very similar to Mike Vrabel taking over for the Patriots. You've got an entity that is going to instill toughness and physicality on a side of the ball that desperately needs it, and a defensive group that doesn't really have very many big-name stars, but a lot of solid players. If they handle free agency in the draft effectively enough, they could be positioned to go on that type of a run. But where we should buy in and be excited is the fact that Brian Daboll and Cam Ward are going to be working together. I also personally think that their offensive line has pieces but has not gelled together enough effectively, and they just need to be positioned and better coached to play to their strengths. Receiver is going to be a big issue. But if I were to pick one prospect at the beginning of the 2026 NFL Draft that will help them reach those aspirations of at least making the playoffs, it is Arvell Reese from Ohio State. He is a do-it-all defensive player. This past year, Matt Patricia, who was an NFL defensive coordinator, used him so creatively, and his usage should be translatable in a one-to-one move. Overthinking Arvell Reese will end up destroying his career. He, at Ohio State, played off-ball linebacker. At times, he was brought down near the line of scrimmage to rush off the edge, but where he was the most disruptive was when he was brought up in front of guards and centers and was sent as a blitzing linebacker. He was way too quick, way too long, way too flexible for those interior guys, guards and centers, to be able to keep up with him. I think that Rob Saleh is such a brilliant defensive coach that he's going to be able to tap into the skill set that Arvell Reese has. Now, I'm not comparing him to Fred Warner, but look at what he was able to tap into multiple times with Fred Warner. Fred Warner became an elite NFL linebacker because of his athletic tools. I think that Rob Saleh has shown a track record of understanding, I've got athletes, I've got the best athletes on the field. How do I set those guys up to win and to succeed? The ultimate chess master out dueling guys that he is going to war with every single week. Arvell Reese is that ultimate piece on the board that has its own set of rules. It is not even comparable to any chess piece. He can do things in the league that no other linebacker, no other edge rusher are capable of doing. The most important part is his instincts as an off-ball linebacker make him a different prospect than Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons. So Arvell Reese, if he ends up with the Tennessee Titans, which might be tough to come to fruition, maybe theoretically if the Jets ended up going David Bailey and the Cardinals considered Jeremiah Love, or the Cardinals took Reuben Bain or someone else, that they could end up with Arvell Reese in their lap. But it is going to take a lot of luck in order for that to come to fruition. For the New York Giants, the guy that I see helping this team take the next step is Sonny Styles, the linebacker from Ohio State. My pro comp for him is a pterodactyl. 6'5", ran a 4.4 40, 240 pounds, flies all over the place. But just like his teammate Arvell Reese, this guy's not just an athlete. His instincts are tremendous. He's played a lot of football, and there's been a year-by-year growth. I've evaluated him in multiple draft classes where I've seen his instincts improve. Matt Patricia was the final guy that needed to get the most out of him, extracted everything out of him from a just tackle-to-tackle lineup as a linebacker. There is no better player in this class at diagnosing, but also making plays at the line of scrimmage because he can flow downfield. His arms are so long that he can reach and he can grab and he can make plays wherever. And he's also really difficult to block because he's as big as a dang tight end. I look at John Harbaugh and I look at their defensive success, and there's two positions that they have built, or that John Harbaugh rather has built his defenses through. It has been through elite athletes at linebacker, and it's been at safety with guys that have rare instincts. So if this pick isn't Caleb Downs, which we could argue Caleb Downs is the other option that works in this conversation as well, Sonny Styles to me would be the player for them to target. I think knowing the issues that they had at linebacker this past year in their run defense, and the decision to move on from Bobby Okereke, a captain at linebacker, you're getting a significant upgrade. I see this world in this vision that the New York Giants grab Sonny Styles and their defense goes from being shaky and inconsistent but promising to being one of the most athletic units in the NFL. Depending on how they'd address safety and corner, this defense could go from being a bottom defense to one of the top defenses in the league. And we've seen massive jumps like that. That happened for the New England Patriots. Harbaugh, being in his first year in New York, could see a similar type of a jump for New York and for the Giants this upcoming season. The last for the New Orleans Saints, a little bit different than the Patriots, but it is going to be a second-year quarterback with Tyler Shuck, older player who showed a lot of promise at the end of the season, pushed himself into the Offensive Rookie of the Year discussion. You also have Kellen Moore in his second season, so he's got a little bit of an edge on the Mike Vrabel convo. He's also not a guy who's been a head coach previously, so again, a little bit different. But if we're looking for a young situation for a team that's got some pieces, that has some former first-round picks, second-round picks, guys that they drafted early that showed promise, they've got a good offensive line. They have a solid defense that could show some signs of improvement depending on what they do the rest of this offseason. And a wide receiver, it's underrated, assuming Chris Olave is back and he's with the team. But I look at this offensive line, ready to take another step forward after there's been multiple years of investment with Talisi Fuaga and Kelvin Banks, that they're ready to become one of the best units in the league. What do you do with that? You get a kick-ass running back like Jeremiah Love. I have a little bit of a worry here that he's not going to be on the board and he's not going to be available. But I think that Kellen Moore, knowing his history of having premier elite running backs that he has coached as an offensive coordinator, to turn Jeremiah Love into the next guy should provide a lot of excitement for Saints fans. I see, and I'm not comparing Jeremiah Love to Saquon Barkley, but knowing what he got out of Saquon before he took the Saints job, I think that if they landed Jeremiah Love, Saints fans should be just absolutely juiced up and excited. He is, and this is where the comparison does come into play. It's not a one-to-one comp, but both guys, Saquon and Jeremiah Love, home run threats every single time they touch the football. Every single time they touch the ball, you know that there is a chance. If they separate, they make one guy miss, they're going to the house for a touchdown. That is how you make a guy like Tyler Shuck play better, by taking a lot of things off of his shoulders where he doesn't need to be the big-time playmaker. Let Jeremiah Love be the superstar. Let Tyler Shuck be your Jalen Hurts. Just do enough. Just keep the offense on schedule. He doesn't need to make a giant grand leap. If the Saints get Love and we see Shuck make a 10% improvement in his performance, that team could quietly become a playoff team, and maybe they could do even more than that. Comment below who you think could be a key missing piece for a young team that is drafting early in the 2026 NFL Draft. Hit the subscribe button. We'll catch you later.